Hey, what's up people? This is Zara from Kingdom 2115 and in this video we'll talk about COK battle mechanics. So basically we will do an in-depth analysis of how COK battles work. But before we do that, I would like to say a few things. Number one, all of the information I would be sharing in this video is hypothetical and just a player model. None of this is confirmed from any of the official COK sources. Number two, the purpose of this video is just to make it easier for people to understand the COK battle algorithms. And number three, please feel free to correct me if I am wrong or put your opinions about the same in the comment section. I do read them. It's gonna help me as well as all the players who are actually watching this video. So without wasting much time, let us start with the content. So we basically have 4 troop types in this game: infantry, cavalry, archer and siege, and all of those troops have some basic attributes like attack, defense, health and range. They also have some attributes like speed, range and upkeep, which we will not talk about because they are not combat specific. So we will talk about the main attributes which are responsible for the battle damages. Starting with attack. So we will start with the first attribute, that is attack. It simply means the amount of damage you can deal to the enemy in each round. So right here you can see that for this infantry I have this attack as 95 points, and I would have done some research in my college and I would have improved this value, which you can calculate. But throughout this whole video, whenever I am talking about attack, defense or health, we will be talking about points and not the bonus buff that you can see in your battle reports. Similarly, we have this defense attribute, which is the amount of incoming damage from the enemy attack that can be reduced. So right here you can see for infantry we have a defense of 52 points. We also have health, which is basically the amount of damage that each of your troops can take before they get wounded or before they die. So the sole purpose of the game is to reduce the health of the opponent troops to 0 so that you can win the battle. Then we have range, which is basically the range of rows that troops can hit in a single attack. For example, my infantry has a range of 1. This means it can hit the closest troops to it which are at range 1. For example, it's gonna attack the melee cavalry of the enemy or the infantry shields that are at the front rows. So based on what we have learned up till now, we can come up with a basic battle mechanics. Suppose this is player 1 and this is player 2 with some health. So whenever this player 1 is going to attack, the defensive attributes of the opponent comes into picture, which will act as a barrier and reduce the net effective attack of the first player. So this will keep happening until the HP of the opponent is reduced to 0. And based on this assumption, we can come up with the basic formula of damage, that is first player attack minus the defense of the other player minus the health of the other player. And we can also calculate the damage rate, which is basically attack of the first player minus the defense of the opponent divided by the health of the opponent group. We will also try to understand all of this formula with the help of an example. So we will try to understand the health diminishing effect in this example. So let us begin our example with an assumption that the attacker's attack is 101, his defense, the defender's defense is 1 and the defender's health is 1 point. So what will happen in this scenario based on our formula? The damage rate calculation would be attacker's attack 101 minus the defender's defense, that is 1, divided by the defender's health, that is 1, is equal to 100 casualty. So one troop of the attacker is going to kill 100 troops of the defender if they have these stats. Now also let's see what happens if the defender's health is improved and is now 10. So when his health is improved, the damage rate calculation would look like this and he will have only 10 casualty. So this is what health diminishing effect is. More health you have, the lesser casualties you will have. So that is why health attribute is very important in this game. Now we will talk about the process of battle in this game. This game, every battle happens in rounds. So the battle takes place in several rounds. Each round, one player gets an opportunity to attack the other player. During that time, the troops of the other player sit idle and their defensive attributes come into picture. And once the round ends, in the next round, the opponent troops get a chance to attack back. So this keeps happening in a to and fro motion until the HP of one of the opponent troops is reduced to 0 and all of his troops die. Now, number of rounds is undefined, but it is definitely fixed because we have seen in various battle reports where the attacker is too strong. The report says that the enemies were redirected because they were too strong and the battle ended prematurely. So this means even though all of the troops were not killed of the attacker, the battle still ended because the number of rounds is undefined but fixed. Then there are several other factors that define the outcome of the game. For example, counter-attack ability, multiple hits and enhancement damages in the prayers of troops. Then we have awakening damages that came after the introduction of T14 troops. Then we have crit rates and critical damages, dodge rate, accuracy. So why are we talking about all of these factors? Because for the time being, I want you to ignore all of these. The reason being, COK is too complex to understand. If you want to understand the basic battle mechanics, we have to ignore all of these facts that these things are also happening because these are the reasons that the game is now chance based, and that is why no two battle reports are same. So let's move on with our another topic, which is counter mechanics. So you might have seen this image in the game which tells you about the relationships between troops which represent their counter relationship. So for example, infantry has a strong counter relationship with cavalry. It's gonna deal a lot more damage to cavalry. And then we also have some small restraint like archer, that is our bow cavalry has a weak restraint against mangonel. So it is going to deal more damage to mangonel but not that much which a strong counter relationship does. So now by definition, counter mechanics, the counter ability is the ability to deal high damage to the certain troops, and since the value of this ability is not defined by COK, they are not revealing it. So for the sake of understanding in this video, we are making an assumption that for same troop types it is 1.0, for no counter relationship it is 1.0, that is the damage would be same, no increment at all. For weak counter it will be 1.5 and for strong counter it will be 2.0. We are familiar with the relationship that strong counter is higher than weak, weak is higher than no relationship at all. So this numerical value will just try to help us to understand the examples better. And with the introduction of counter, we come up with this formula that now the damage rate calculation is your attack into default counter that the game provides minus enemy defense divided by infantry health. So let us try to understand this formula with the help of an example. Now let's try to understand the counter mechanics with the help of an example. So we are taking the same stats we have used in the previous example. These are the attacker's attack of 101, defense of 1 and health of 1. And this was the damage rate that we have calculated. But now this time consider that he has a counter of 2.0. And when we talk about counter of 2, this means they have a strong counter against each other. Suppose infantry is attacking cavalry or cavalry is attacking archer. In that scenario, what will happen? The damage rate calculation would be 102, 101 into 2. 2 is your counter. So your attack is multiplied twice. Then you reduce the defense and divide it by HP. So it gives us a numerical value of 201 casualty. So the same troop, if it was attacking the same troop, you would have 100 casualty. But now since it's a counter troop, you are dealing almost double the damage. Now we also have ways to increase our counter bonus, which is basically improving the counter ability. For example, let's say if I have a 40% counter ability, it will just add 0.4%, 0.4 to the default value. So we will talk about this new term here, that is effective counter, which is nothing but a combination of your default counter, which is provided by the game, the value of which is not disclosed, plus your new counter ability that you have received because of your research or your bonuses. and we divide that by 100 because we want to convert that percentage value into a numerical value. So similar to counter increment, we also have ways to decrease the counter ability of the opponent troops. For example, if I have 40% countered by ability of any troop, it will just reduce the counter ability of that troop, and now my effective counter would look like the default counter which is provided by the game, plus the counter ability of the opponent troop that he has, minus the countered by ability that I have. So this will give me overall effective counter ability value that gets multiplied by the attacker's attack, and then the damage is calculated. So this net damage rate can be calculated with the help of this formula, which says that your damage rate is equal to your attack into effective counter that we just calculated minus the defense of the enemy, and this whole term divided by the enemy health. So this formula will give us the casualty rate, like how many troops your single troop will be killing in one round. Now, after talking about counters, we have other kind of additional damages bonus in the game. For example, we have offensive damage, then we have damage dealt by troop like infantry damage, damage dealt by cavalry, and we have troop offensive damage like cavalry offensive damage, and so on. All of these attributes are net effective damage multipliers. So when I'm saying multiplier, please note that it will try to multiply the overall damage that you will be dealing to the enemy. Now we already know that we calculated damage rate with the help of this formula, that is your attack into default counter minus enemy defense overall divided by enemy health. But now since we also have these additional buffs that improve damage, the final equation looks like this, where you have this effective damage rate which is equal to damage rate. This damage rate is defined in the above formula, and this damage rate gets multiplied with a multiplier, and that multiplier is 1 plus all of the damages that you have, that is your offensive damage, damage dealt plus troop offensive damage. So this is additional damage bonus that you have, and similar to additional damage bonus that you have, opponent will have a counter mechanism for this, which is damage reduction bonus. So let's talk about those as well. So the opponent will have three kind of damages, damage reductions, that is defensive damage reduction. Then he has received damage by troop like cavalry received damage or infantry received damage. Then he will have troop defensive damage like cavalry defensive damage and infantry defensive damage. So all of these attributes are responsible to reduce the net effective damage. So these are reducers. For example, we have seen in the previous equation that we were having this additional multiplier, but now in this equation you can see that all of those additional damage multipliers have a reduction associated with them. One thing to note here is that if the attacker has an OD and you have a DDR, this DDR will only reduce the value of the OD. We cannot just add OD, damage dealt and troop OD first and then add these reductions and then just subtract them. That will not work. Reason being, let us understand this with the help of an example. Suppose I have an OD of 300 and the opponent has a DDR of 400, right? So all of my OD gets nullified and he still have additional 100% defensive damage reduction as a spare. But that additional 100% will not help him to reduce the damage I am dealing with the cavalry damage dealt. Because to reduce the damage dealt by this attribute, he needs received damage. So all of these attributes are independent of each other, and in order to have their reducers, you have to have their respective reducers because only those will work. So that is why the formula looks like this, and we will understand this formula in detail with the help of an example. So before we talk about the example, there is one major question that has been asked many times, that if I have to compare two damages, right? If we have offensive damage, if we have damage dealt by cavalry, which is more important and why? So based on what we have learned, let us try to answer this. As we have seen from the equation, despite being separate attributes, they have the same effect. they are just the multipliers, right? They are responsible for multiplying the damage rate, but it is an easy way to increase the DDR to counter the OD. You can have a 300 DDR when the opponent is having a 300 OD, right? So that will get nullified. But what about the damage dealt by cavalry? If an opponent has a 130 damage dealt by cavalry, in order to reduce that, you would need infantry receive damage, cavalry receive damage, and all of the troop receive damage to be 130, which is not possible for all of the players to have. So your damage dealt by cavalry is always going to deal damage. It will always have a positive value. So that is why improving damage dealt of specific troops really help, and you deal more damage to the enemy. But now what should I use? For example, I have a dragon word which gives offensive damage, then I have lone wolf which gives damage dealt by cavalry. So which one is better? The answer is simple. No one is better. It depends on who you are attacking with. If your OD is able to nullify the DDR of the opponent and you are dealing damage, and his troop receive damage is less, and if your damage dealt by cavalry is higher and it can give you a more value, it is better. If not, then go with OD. So it just depends on what troop attributes your opponent has, and that way you can use it. And I would definitely prefer to use the OD dragon word, because it also have ODR, which will counteract the DD of the enemy, that is defensive damage. So now we can go towards our example. So now let's try to understand what we have learned with the help of an example. So we have these stats of the attacker and these stats of the defender, and we will try to put these values in our formula. So our effective damage rate is 1500, that is the attacker's attack, into effective counter, which is basically the default counter, which is 2.0, because the attacker is attacking with infantry and defender is defending with cavalry. So infantry has a natural counter, strong counter against cavalry, that is Y 2.0, plus 0.4 because the attacker has counter cavalry of 40%, minus 0.3 because the defender has reduced counter by infantry of 30%. So this is the effective counter. Then we minus the whole value with 1500, that is the defense of the enemy, that is the defense of the defender. Then this gets multiplied with the multiplier, which is 1, the default value, plus offensive damage minus DDR, plus damage dealt minus reduced damage, troop damage, plus troop OD minus troop DD, divided by the overall health of the defender 1 troop. So the answer comes out to be 90, that is 1 infantry of attacker will kill about 90 cavalry of the defender. So this is a formula which is good, because till now we have not considered all of the other factors which also decide the outcome of the battles that we talked about in slide number 12. So if we also consider all of these factors, this number gets reduced to a lot lesser value, and there are a lot of different other factors or probabilities which can change the outcome of the battle. So with this video, the purpose was that you guys should understand the basic way the attributes work, so you know what attributes to improve. And I hope that it helps. If it really helped you, drop a thumbs up to the video. If you are new to the channel, subscribe. See you in the next video. Till then, have a nice day.